In this recording, I'm going to talk you through how to make a perfect table in Excel. So let's say you've been doing a practical and you've just scribbled down your results as shown in this table here. So the practical that this was how does changing the concentration affect the rate of diffusion? Now there are a number of things that are obviously wrong with this particular table, most specifically this, because that's obviously the concentration, which is the independent variable, and the independent variable should always go in the first column of a table. So if we go to our Excel spreadsheet, in the first column here, we're going to put concentration and the unit, which is moles. Now you can see here that the text that I have written has gone outside the boundaries of this box. And that's very easy to fix. You just move your cursor to the boundary between the two things, double click, and the cell will then increase in size to become the same size as the word that you've written. Now in this column, what we're going to want is the time taken, and that's going to be in seconds, and that is going to have, there were 5 runs. If we go back to our original table, you can see that each concentration had 5 different runs. So we're then going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along there. Now what happens up here is, what you can do here is you can merge these 5 cells so that the time taken applies to all 5 cells. And to do that, you just click this button up here called Merge and Center, and there you've merged your 2 cells. Now with merging cells, it is really important that you never merge cells that you're putting data into. So for example here, where I wrote concentration and concentration didn't fit into the 1 cell, what you need to do there is increase the size of the cell, not merge it. So for example here, if I write average, well that fits. In fact, that should also have a unit, so that should be average in seconds. But here, if I write standard deviation, you can see that goes on too far. If I were to merge these 2 cells here, that would really confuse the computer. So we don't do that. Instead, we double click, and that then makes that all okay. So then we can see that if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on there, then we're going to need to make sure that the numbers for the concentration start in this cell. So it was 0, 0.5, 1.0, 1.5, and 2.0. Now, a couple of things now to mention. Firstly, it looks a bit messy having a gap here. So you've got 2 choices. You either move that to there. Okay, that's one way that you can do it. Or what you can do is you can merge these 2 cells, which perhaps looks a little bit neater. And the same here. The same here, and the same here. Now with the standard deviation, what you could also do at this point is you could click on wrap text, which would then allow you to shrink the size of your column because the 2 words can sit on top of each other. That really just depends on the size of the table, the end table. Okay, so that's set up. So our basic table is now set up. Now we've got a problem in this column here, because all of our values should have the same degree of accuracy. And you can see that Excel, being ever so helpful, when you type in 1.0, it just converts it to 1. But here we've got 0.5, so we need all of these to be the same degree of accuracy. So what you do is you select the all of the cells, then you right-click or do whatever you need to do the equivalent of right-clicking. Go to Format Cells, then you go to Number, and then you choose the number of decimal places. So in this case, it's 1 decimal place. Okay, and now everything has the same degree of accuracy. So the final thing we need to do is then input our actual data from the table down here. And I've cheated and I've already put it in just to save me a bit of time. So I'm just going to copy it over. So we just pop that in there like that. And in this data, everything was all whole numbers. But if it wasn't at this point, you would do the same as you did before, just then, and you would make sure that everything was the same degree of accuracy. So our last two columns here are averages and standard deviations. And what we need to do in that is we need to make sure that we put in a calculation. Now, Excel is very clever at calculations. There's lots of ways to help you. So what you do to start with is you put equals, and then you just start to type average, and you can see that average then pops up. You'll obviously need to do this in whatever language your computer is in. So then you double click on that, and you simply select the 5 values that you want to calculate the average and hit return, and now it comes up with the correct value. Now you can see in this green box at the bottom right hand corner there's a little square. If you grab hold of that square, you can see my cursor goes from being a white cross to being a black cross. If I grab hold of that and I drag the green box down, what that's going to do is it's going to put the formula into every single one of those cells. Now this little green triangle, it's Excel's way of just checking that you didn't want to include this column of data into your averages. It looks quite ugly, so you just go here and you go ignore error, and there we go. Now you can see straight away that we've got a problem because this says 19.6. That's not the same degree of accuracy. Now your average needs to be the same degree of accuracy as your raw data, so we need to convert this to whole numbers. So again, it's right click, format cells, number, and 0 decimal places, and then OK. There is another way that you can do that. Up the top here, you can see here, you can increase the number of decimal places, or you can decrease the number of decimal places. So there are 2 ways of changing the number of decimal places on your table. Okay. Now the final column that we need to calculate is the standard deviation. So again, we're going to be putting in a formula, and the standard deviation formula for the English computer is STDEV. Now you can see there are lots of different types of standard deviations. We just use STDEV. Again, you double click and you select the 5 pieces of raw data. You do not include the average, and then you just hit return, and it's going to give you a value. You select that, grab the little green square, drag it all the way down, and again it thinks you've made a mistake because you haven't included the average or the concentration. That's fine, we can just ignore the error. Okay, and there's a lot of decimal places here, so I'm just going to decrease the number of decimal places. We're just going to have 3 decimal places. That's completely fine. And there we have a pretty good table. There's one more thing we need to do, which is rule it up. So to do that, you select the entire table and you just come up here to the little window button and select all borders, and there you have it. If you want to, within this, you can make it look a little bit smarter if you wanted to, by choosing a thick outside border. So you could put certain parts of the table with a slightly thicker border just to kind of mark it out a little bit more clearly, and that can look quite smart. So you're sort of separating your raw data from your processing or whatever. You could shade bits of this using the colors, but to be honest, that's really not necessary. This is the right way to draw a table in Excel. There are ways that you can come here and you can insert a table. My advice would be to not do that, because Excel puts all sorts of peculiar formatting into that, which can then make doing some of your calculations quite challenging. From here, what you can do is you can just copy your table very easily and pop it into another, I haven't opened the Word document, but I'll pop it back into the OneNote so you can see. You can now just pop it back into another document very nicely. Unfortunately, when you pop it back into OneNote, it does do slightly weird things because it unmerges stuff, so it doesn't look very nice. But back into Word, it would look completely normal. And that is how you draw a table.